An age ago, the beating heart of our people was a king who knew only victory. He wanted nothing more than an honorable death on the battlefield. Yet, none could match him, and so he wandered the earth, becoming lost in time and tide. Then we too lost our honest purpose, while silk-clad men sat upon the throne. But tremble now, all cities that lay under the stars, for out of the shadows and mists of the land of promise, our courage has been rekindled, our heart has returned, and the world will burn.
Hey, how's everybody doing tonight? If someone in the chat could give me a shout out, I think we got a couple people in the chat right now just to make sure that you can hear me. And I will get myself going today with the live stream. We're going to talk about Chester Gould today, but as usual, everybody can put their comments in the chat. All right, Sound Engraver is there, says loud and clear. Great, great that you can hear me. I'm always concerned that I'm added to the stream correctly. I don't have a whole lot of visuals to show you today, although I should have downloaded a bunch of stuff about Dick Tracy because we're talking about Chester Gould, but I never really got to do that. So I just show you this background for a lot of this. But as usual, as I said, put your comments in the background or in the chat. Just tag me in it or put a question mark if you have anything to say to me that you want me to ask or answer, and I'll get to that eventually. I'm going to talk a few minutes about what's going on with a few things here for my channel, and then move into making great comics and really appreciating great comics. Just really, if you are someone who has subscribed, as I said, to one of my graphic novels, we're looking at getting the Valiant Heroes out as soon as possible. We had a publication date or a shipping date on that of October, but October has come and gone. So just to let everybody know, I did send out a notification on Indiegogo via Indiegogo saying that we will be late, hopefully only about a month, because we're just trying to put the finishing touches on the last story, which is the Rampaging Thor. And if anybody wants to take a look at my graphic novels, the three graphic novels are linked in the description with the two Indiegogo pages, which are Thomas Valiant, The Valiant Heroes, and Crom the Destroyer. Two superhero graphic novels and one return to form for low fantasy. So I just wanted to get that out of the way really quickly. And as I said, links there are in the description for my graphic novels. And I'm only going to talk, I think, a short period, hopefully, anyways, about Chester Gould today and about Dick Tracy, really, mainly. But the reason why I was thinking about this, and I like to jump around when I do these videos about making great comics and appreciating great comics. And the thing was that it was, I think, the 4th of October, 1931, was the first publication of Dick Tracy in the Chicago Tribune, I think it was. Might have been the Chicago Herald, but I think it was the Chicago Tribune. One of the papers, one of the major papers in Chicago. But again, so I started to look into this just because you'd see a couple of things pop up here and there around the 1st of October, because that was the time of the first publication of Dick Tracy. And of course, great character that everyone probably knows to some degree about Dick Tracy. Either of you watched that bad movie that came out in the 90s, or there's serials that you can have watched all these kinds of things. But my point of talking about Chester Gould and Dick Tracy within the sphere of making great comics is, number one, it is a great comics. It is a great comic that you should go back and read. It's iconic to say the least. There's a reason why most people still to this day would recognize Dick Tracy in one form or another. But really, I think the reason why it became so popular was because Chester Gould, the creator of Dick Tracy, was so passionate about making comics. Well, he was a cartoonist. He said he called himself a cartoonist, and his comics were strip comics for the newspaper. That's what they were mainly. And so you got a couple of panels and very much akin to the Will Eisner stuff that we've been going over in the last couple of months in this series about making great comics. But the point being that, and again, I'm just going to leave this picture up in the background for the majority of this, I think, because just that iconic look of Dick Tracy is something to bring to mind the simplicity of the greatness of this book. But Chester Gould, as I said, was someone who not only got a lot of people into reading comic strips who had never read comic strips before, but he also got a lot of people into the genre, I guess you call it at that time, of true crime. And these are the kinds of stories that he was publishing with Dick Tracy. And this is the kind of thing that he did. He hauled a lot of new people into these stories, getting them to read these basically just 3-panel stories, or even sometimes shorter, these very, very small stories of Dick Tracy that will be published, within the daily newspaper. But I think that is the hallmark of someone who is a great writer and a great cartoonist at the same time, because he wrote and did all the art for the Dick Tracy stuff that came out within the paper. It was said that he never actually wrote any of the stories. That is to say, he never sat down and wrote them. He just drew them, and that was his writing. So unique there, to say the least. Not a lot of people do it that way. But if you're only doing a couple panels at a time, again, if you're doing something like Will Eisner's Spirit, you can do something like that. And we see a lot of things that are akin to that right now with webtoons on the internet. But again, back to the point of my reason why I called this particular version of my live stream Reflections of Reality. It's because, again, first of all, Chester Gould, as I said, hauled a lot of people into reading comics and reading true crime who had never actually had any interest in that before. And a lot of that was women, by the way. And the thing is that he hauled those people into it with good storytelling. And I've been concentrating a lot on the art within these live streams, but tonight I'm concentrating on the storytelling. And it is his masterful storytelling that brought new people into reading comics, into reading these comic strips of Dick Tracy. So this is what we need today. You see people leaving the comic fandom, if you want to call it that, or just really leaving anything that has to do with comics because of the state of the industry. What we need right now is to haul more people into reading comics and comic strips and everything else, because honestly, it's like the early days of the comic strip with webtoons and everything else. There is that medium out there to draw so many people into comics, and it could be done. It could be done if good storytelling was applied. And that's the point. Chester Gould was a good storyteller. And why was he a good storyteller? Well, he was a good storyteller because he did the exact same thing that Aristotle talked about 2,400 years ago about a story being a reflection of reality. If you don't know, Dick Tracy is based upon a real person. Supposedly, Dick Tracy, the character of Dick Tracy, was based upon a cop from New York at the time. And Chester Gould, when he wrote these stories, again, he was just looking for a job. He was looking for a job as a cartoonist. He got something that stuck, so he ran with it, all this kinds of thing. But he did massive amounts of research in order to write these simple stories, these cartoon stories. Again, called himself a cartoonist. And yet, he would do things like go on ride-alongs with the police, to see how they worked. He would stay at the station and observe how cops would work. He did tours of um, various kinds of law enforcement techniques, all these kinds of things. He studied criminology. He took classes on criminology in order to understand, first of all, the criminal mind, and secondly, the way that the police would pursue a criminal. And these are the kinds of things he did for a comic strip. Okay. And again, it was a very, very popular comic strip, I'll admit. So popular, by the way, that there were stories where people just could not wait for the next comic strip to come out in the next day's paper. So sometimes his comic strips were smuggled out of the paper office so that people would disseminate it on the sly so that they could get a jump on the story and see where Dick Tracy was going, because these stories, although they were a couple of panels within a paper, they were continuous in their storytelling, which again was something that he proved to be very, we'll say, not telling, but very much a draw to the kind of storytelling that he was trying to bring people to. But again, this man, in drawing a cartoon, a couple of panel cartoon for a daily paper, was taking criminology classes, going to the cops, asking them questions. He had so many friends within the law and justice departments. He helped set up small, what would you call them? Crime Stoppers programs, which is, I think that was their actual name, the Crime Stoppers programs within in Chicago and various places around America. And when he did that, he was again being introduced to police stations and people that would give him more and more information. And again, this is what he was doing in order to find this reality, this grounding of reality for this comic strip. And this is not something he alone did, not by a long shot. Just to move on from Chester Gould to a couple others that I can think of off the top of my head, and I will give you a little bit more in the background for some visuals here. Again, I want to go back to, let's see, we'll go back to speaking of Will Eisner, as we usually put something about Will Eisner's stuff in there. Let's show some Will Eisner here. I think some spirit. I think we have some spirit stuff there just from Will Eisner's book. But anyway, put that up in the background. But if you read anything about or delve into the, what would you call it? The world of comics, the world of the history of comics. And if you have any comic greats that you particularly like and follow, and I do, within the larger history of comics, back to the beginning, and you look at their lives and how they work, a lot of them, you will see over and over again. Oh, just give me 1 second, everyone. My apologies. My apologies. I apologize severely to everyone here. Yes, if you can hear me, give me a shout out in the comments. I just had a little technical difficulty. I usually do, but this one was a little more pressing than most because my computer was just not plugged in, and I was not 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 going to be with you for long if my computer shut off. I apologize for that. And then it put me on mute because I was fiddling around. I apologize. But I'll get back to my topic. Hopefully we'll get back on track. But as I was saying, talking about reflections of reality, talking about trying to bring reality into storytelling. One of the other great comic producers, and really one of the most influential people within the modern period of comics, was Jim Shooter. And Jim Shooter was writing comics since he was a kid. And when he got to writing Legion of Superheroes, he wanted to create new characters, but he wanted to create characters that he said, didn't just point at something and their powers would activate. He wanted more dynamism within his character, his new character. So he created Karate Kid. And what does he say he did when he created Karate Kid? He had to learn about karate. He had to get books on karate. He had to study it. He had to figure out how these people would move, all this kinds of thing. Again, reflections of reality. This is the kinds of thing that you would do, that he would do in order to make a great story. And you see this over and over again as a pattern when you look into the history of comics, and you see people, especially when they do interviews with them, with comic greats in their studios themselves. Someone usually makes a comment of, you have a wall of books over there. What are those wall of books? And invariably they will say, that wall of books is my source material. That is my library to look things up and make sure I got things right. Again, reflections of reality. These people were trying to make sure that their stories were grounded in reality, which is the exact way that you create any good story. I always talk about an interview, to move on to just another person that pops into my mind. I always talk about an interview that was recently done by Ann Nesenti. And Ann Nesenti talks about in that interview how she didn't quite understand the whole idea of why and how everything comes down to a fight in a superhero comic. So what did she do? She joined a boxing club so that she could learn how to throw a punch and to take a punch, so that she could understand all of the action sequences and how dramatic they were within her storytelling. And again, this is research. This is going back to primary research and just understanding your subject matter. And this is something that is sorely lacking within comics today, which ironically is the time when we have access to the internet and more information at our fingertips than ever before. All it takes for people to write a good story is to research it, and that research is at their fingertips. And yet, these people who are writing stories for especially comics right now do not do so. It is ridiculous that these people cannot do simple research in the thing that they want to actually tell the story about. And I would say again, part of this is laziness, part of this is the political ideology that has captured so much of the comic making industry. We'll just put it that way. And these people have in their minds the idea that they can tell stories off of other stories off of other stories. They continue to build one of these chapters, as it were, upon another, upon another. And it gets you further and further away from reality. This is one of the rules of Will Eisner, by the way. We're talking about Will Eisner. Let's put up something out in the background. 1 second here. Just 1 second. Let's see. I think I have something else here to show you. Some great old. No, we'll show you some Sal Buscema and some great stuff here in the background, anyways. But the point is that, again, his idea, one of his ideas, that you can't take a story and then build upon another story and then build upon another story. And the reason why you can't do that is because the further you do that, when you take a story and then build it upon a story as your essential reference, you're getting farther and farther away from reality every time you do that, which again is the problem with modern storytelling, because they believe that they can do that. But that's not a reflection of reality. And again, we're looking at Jack Kirby in the background. Jack Kirby was one of those people who did interviews within his studio. And he was one of those people who had a wall full of books. And he said, yes, this is my reference library. I go and look things up again to try to bring it back to reality, to try to bring it back to something that is based upon the real, to connect with your reader. Once again, going back to that Will Eisner idea that there is a contract, an unspoken contract between the artist and the reader, so that they trust one another and the reader allows himself to be sucked into this story, so his suspension of disbelief gets engaged, and he can then, especially for a comic, see this two-dimensional image and bring it to life within his mind as if it were real, in order to see it as a three-dimensional story. And again, the basis of reality can be many, many things. We're talking about, first of all, Chester Gould and Dick Tracy. Dick Tracy was a cartoonist. All those Dick Tracy great villains and those iconic, that iconic square jaw, Dick Tracy, all of this is very, very cartoony looking within its story, within its storytelling. And yet it was grounded in that factual reality of how to tell a good story. One of the fun things that I ran across a long time ago was when they were doing the very first stories for Batman. I read the actual comics. Um, it was a reprint of the actual comic that those first Batman stories came from, and they showed all of the stuff that was not just in the story, but also the what is it, the ads and all that kind of stuff. What did you get to see in some of these? Well, they weren't really ads. They were more one-page stories in themselves. It was, this is how the detectives, because we're talking about detective comics, this is how detectives work. This is what a habeas corpus is. There was a page about, court documents. There was another one about fingerprints, all these kinds of things. These are the basic reflections of reality that you want to go back to for detective stories. And again, that's the kind of thing that we need. That's the kind of thing that really brings a story to life and hauls people into a medium that they've never actually had shown any interest in until they are captured by a good story. And that's what we need within comics right now. And hopefully, I haven't had too many difficulties, and we have some questions in the comments. But before I get there, I want to go to the comments. But I want to say, within modern storytelling, within modern comics especially, you don't see this reflection of reality. And one of the things that I always sticks out of my mind is that interview with Ann Nesenti, because again, she said she joined a boxing club in order to learn how to box, in order to um, get a feel for the fight scenes within her comics that she was writing, so that she, in her words, wasn't being a poser, so that she wasn't trying to pull the wool over people's eyes. She actually knew what she was doing. And I took that, and it really stuck in my mind when she said that, because something similar was going on at the same time when I was listening to her say those words. And what was that? It was um, Kelly Sue DeConnick, who is one of these, quote unquote, progressive writers for Marvel and DC right now. And, the creator, we'll say the creator of the revised Captain Marvel that you see, and then you're going to see on the screens within your movie theaters in a couple of weeks, or is it a couple of days? I'm not entirely sure when the Marvels comes out, pretty soon. But she created that new Carol Danvers Captain Marvel, the Carl Manvers Captain Marvel. And she was posting a lot of stuff on the internet, and she's married and she has children, and her children were taking Taekwondo at the time, which is Korean martial arts, if you're not familiar. And she also decided to join, and she was posting all these things about how she was part of this Taekwondo club and she was learning how to fight and all this kinds of thing. But quite honestly, the reason why it was so funny to me, and the reason why it stuck out in my mind, was because I actually, long time ago, I actually was, we'll call it, I don't know what my title was. I can't remember. It was like a junior instructor for Taekwondo. I was the secondary person for instruction within the arm of the school that I was a part of, and I instructed people when the main teacher was not there. Anyways, when I would look at the stuff that Kelly Sue DeConnick would post about her learning how to fight and being part of this Taekwondo club, it was like, lady, you seriously, you're one of those women who would come in with their kids, and sure, you would want to join the class, and we would just give you a belt and keep on pumping or pushing you up from the from one level to another because you had a lot of money and you spent a lot of money at the club and you had your kids in there and all that kind of stuff. You're not learning anything, quite honestly. I mean, I was looking at this stuff once again being posted by Kelly Sue DeConnick, saying to myself, lady, I know you from my time of teaching this exact thing. You're not someone who actually understands what they're doing. And the reason, once again, I say I wanted to talk about that is because that contrasted at that time very specifically with those words of Nan Nesenti when she was talking about how in the 80s she had to join a boxing ring and learn how to take a punch. And this was the difference between these two kinds of two women, comic writers, apart by 30 years at that point, 35 years, and where one of them actually wanted to, be a good storyteller by learning those actual things that you were supposed to learn in order to understand a fight. And then, on the other hand, you had Kelly Sue DeConnick, who was trying to full play, to LARP at saying, I am actually learning all of this stuff. Look at me, look at me. And again, when you look at Kelly Sue DeConnick's writing, you will see the ideas that she is putting down, especially about conflict and how to, you know, put together a fight scene, all these kinds of things. You understand that she doesn't know anything about how to put these things together, not like Ann Nesenti, anyways, and about how to, script a fight scene and how to understand this reality of one of the key factors within superhero comics. Anyways, let me get to some comments and see who is here. Give you a shout out. Hopefully, I wasn't rambling too much. I didn't really have that cohesive an idea for I apologize for tonight's live stream, but I really wanted to talk about Chester Gould if I could. So let's see who's in the comments. Sound Engraver is here. Sound Engraver was the first one here. Thank you very much, Sound Engraver, for coming. As I always shout out Sound Engraver because she has her own channel talking about a lot of the stuff that I talk about within cultural shifts within present day, but more towards music and the music world. So go on over to Sound Engraver's channel if you can and give her a subscription if you like what she does. Tony is here in the chat. How you doing, Tony? I also got Vaz here. How's everybody doing? Once again, for all you regulars, I apologize for my technical difficulties tonight. We have Pear to Bear. How you doing? I'm not familiar. If I've seen you before in the chat, I do not remember. My apologies. Rex is here. How you doing, Rex? Puffy is here. How you doing, Puffy? We also got Pedro here. Let's see. Pedro says, I make it. I can't believe it. And for Dick Tracy tribute, good day. Well, it's much more a tribute. I love Dick Tracy, and really, I would say the Dick Tracy world because there's so many characters there. But I think it's more of a tribute to a very short tribute to Will Eisner and the greatness of his storytelling. But potato sometimes if you're really talking about Dick Tracy. Rex says, one of my few connections to Dick Tracy is through the mentions on Looney Tunes. One of the things about Dick Tracy, speaking about reflections of reality, one of the fun things about Dick Tracy is Chester Gould is credited with an almost Nostradamus level of being able to see into the future and come up with gadgets that we now have today, like the idea of a wristwatch that you can use as a telecommunications device, and also not just that, but television itself. He, I think, had closed circuit television within his world before it actually existed within our world. Tony is here. How you doing? It says, Max Allen Collins was a great Dick Tracy writer. Yes, I am sure that there were many connections to about Dick Tracy and great storytelling that I did not make tonight. As I said, I wanted to talk a little more about Chester Gould than Dick Tracy, but Dick Tracy is his most iconic creation. Michael is here. How you doing? Michael says, Dick Tracy and Sinestro are the only men who can make yellow look good. I didn't think of that. But yes, there is a lot of yellow. Calliope is here. How you doing, Calliope? Let's see. Tony says, would you consider Judge Dredd to be the heir of Dick Tracy? No, not really. I'm not sure where you're going with that, Tony. But no, I don't think so. Although both of them are about law and order, they live in extremely different worlds and extremely different ways of portraying law and order. Let's see. Vaz says, I've never been much into Dick Tracy, but I respect the work and how it impacted the industry. Exactly. Exactly, Vaz. I'm not saying that you should just run out and grab a Dick Tracy something, because there are plenty of reprints of Dick Tracy, or you could probably get them on the internet now. There's a lot of stuff on internet archives and things like that. You could probably get the serials, the original serials for the newspaper. But at the same time, if you don't appreciate it, appreciating how much this man did for the comic industry is key, and which is what I wanted to talk about tonight. So Puffy says, "Oh no, this is where I let's see, this is where I had my technical difficulties. Let's see, scrolling down, see if I can get to back where everybody is talking in the chat. Let's see, scrolling down. Somebody new here in the chat to me, anyways. Lord Kaiser 003. Is it Kaiser? Yeah, I think it is. Is Cobra Kai doing well, or it finally got infected with wokeness? I have no idea. Maybe someone in the chat has probably answered that already. So let's see. Oh, because I was talking about. Oh, that's probably because I was talking about what Karate Kid, which is the Legion of Superheroes creation by Jim Shooter, which is funny because quite honestly, Jim Shooter tells a story fairly often about how he got involved in a lawsuit where someone had claimed to create a character called Karate Kid before the Karate Kid movie, and they were suing the people who made the Karate Kid movie, saying that they owed him money. And then they brought in Jim Shooter, who said, yeah, I created this character called Karate Kid long before this guy claimed he created anything called Karate Kid. I think it was like back in the 50s, 56 or something like that. So it just blew the other guy's case out of the water, which is funny. So yeah, it's probably why you're mentioning Karate Kid. This is, but of course, the Legion of Superheroes Karate Kid is a much different Karate Kid than you would get within the Cobra Kai series and things like that. Let's see. Scrolling down. Rex says, true story. I took karate as a kid, but never finished because the teacher wasn't always there to teach, but I still had some of it in me, and my tall height is an advantage. Yeah, Rex, I'm with you there, because this is part of the reason why. Yeah, I think my tall stature, I'm not that tall. I would say I'm larger than average height, but I'm very Scottish in the way that I'm built. So I know exactly what you're talking about, which means I have a short trunk and very long legs. It's a Scottish thing, probably a Highland Scottish thing. I'm not entirely sure, but it was not good for the Taekwondo that I was taking, because it put too much pressure on my knees, too much, because you have, again, a lot of flying kicks and all that kind of stuff. So I know exactly what you mean about your height, though, and it was difficult for me to try to get myself in the form that I'm in at that time, anyways, in order to be as fast as I could, to, I don't know, to do things properly within that sport. Really was. You can see why the Japanese and Korean and Chinese frame is so, lends itself so much to these kinds of martial arts, because it's very compact movements and it doesn't work that well with lanky people. Just a reflection of reality there for everybody. Let's see, scrolling down. Let's see, Vaz has a comment. Is suspension of belief, suspension of disbelief, I guess would be more, but suspension of belief compatible with a reflection of reality? Yes, indeed, because we have to realize that a story is a reflection of reality. It's not reality itself. So we have to suspend some of our belief, because we are reading either a combination of pictures and words on a page, or sometimes just pictures on a page, sometimes just words on a page. You got to suspend your disbelief of the fact that this is actually real, because we know it's not real to some extent. But if you keep that in your mind, at the forefront of your mind, that this is not real, it's just a story, then it doesn't allow you to get swept up within the activity within the story and view it in the way that is meant to be viewed, which again is a full reality. So those two things, yes, definitely do go together. Let's see, scrolling down. We say here, we got Grin. How you doing? Tracy, Tracy, Tracy. Everywhere I look, Tracy. Again, I just wanted to talk about Chester Gould tonight and his great work, especially with Dick Tracy. So if you have any other uh, places that you could find Dick Tracy stuff that's up on the internet, you share it in the chat. That'd be great. Again, I ran across, as I was looking through this stuff over the last month, there are some old serials for Dick Tracy, black and white serials, of the stories of Dick Tracy within YouTube right now. I don't have the link for them, but they're up there. You just got to poke around a little bit. Stress Level is here. How you doing, Stress Level? Stress Level has a comment saying, they also wanted to be the ultra special visionaries who told the most impactful story ever. Not entirely sure who you're talking about there, but we'll see if I can tap into that conversation as I go down a little more to through the comments. Let's see. Grin says, who's your artist for that Conan? Let's put some Conan up in the best. Put some, it's not Conan, it's Crom the Destroyer. Let's put some Crom the Destroyer up in the background. Put some Crom art. It's listed as Crom art. So I have two, by the way. If you're asking that question, I have two artists for Crom the Destroyer. One is Jim O'Reilly, and the other is Nick Axe. And you can follow them both on Twitter, I think, under just those two handles, Nick Axe and Jim O'Reilly. So Jim O'Reilly does the stuff that's very, very detailed that you're looking at right now. It's the stuff that's more grounded again in the ultra real, and the beautiful stuff you're looking at now is the stuff from Nick Axe, and he does his own version. Again, I would say his version of reality just as detailed as Jim's, but again within a different way of expressing his artistic vision of the character. So again, these are from the same book. Jim does the first chapter. We got Nick doing the second chapter. Crom the Destroyer is, how long is it? 66 pages, if I remember correctly. And there's a few extras. I think I'm too much into trying to get the print file for the Valiant Heroes out right now, so I'm blanking on the exact number of pages for Crom the Destroyer, but it's a minimum of 66 pages, if I remember. So beautiful art throughout, and you can either get a comic-sized version of Crom the Destroyer, which is inked by the comic great Mike Gustovich, who worked for Marvel and DC. And he actually worked on Conan the King for Marvel, doing inks for that, as well as, pretty much every comic character that you might think of from the early 80s. He did pencils for Batman, and he did Thor and Avengers and Hulk and everybody else. Anyways, so you can either get the comic version, which is inked by Mike Gustovich, which is a normal comic size, or you can get the artistic version, which is just the black and white pencils from the artists themselves, which we're going to publish in both formats. You can get either of those for the same price. The black and white version is a magazine size, so basically the size you would get of Savage Sword of Conan, just to let everybody know. So those are the two. I like to talk up my artists if at all possible. So yeah, go follow Nick Axe or Jim O'Reilly on Twitter if you want to follow their work. Great stuff. I post a lot of their stuff on my Twitter account, which is also linked in the description if you're wondering. So let's see. Scrolling down, Rex says, another problem is that they draw from other stories and tropes without putting much of a unique spin on the concepts and characters they use. Well, That's exactly what I'm talking about, Rex, about the fact that the rule is that if you build a story upon a story upon a story, you get further and further away from reality. So their only basis is the trope itself that has been originally published. And so, no, they can't actually offer anything new. That's one of the problems. And I always talk about the interview that I covered with the writer. What's that? What's that? Comic writer. She wrote that disastrous run on She-Hulk a couple of years ago, the one where it's all about food and what the heck, Marika Tamaki. Okay, she also did I Am Not Starfire. She actually did a Batman run for a little while. Anyways, she was talking about how, you know, in an interview, she was saying how human beings are basically made up of nothing. We're just imitators of other things that we see around us. So you can use whatever you see around you as an imitation, as your reality to put down there on the page. And that would include, of course, other stories that you see, which again, this is the whole point of why these stories fall down. I actually think that Marika Tamaki, despite her massive, quote unquote, progressive bent within the political sphere, could actually write good stories if she stopped doing the exact thing you're talking about here, Rex, which is just take a trope and just move from that trope as if it was reality and then not give you anything unique. So that's what she does, unfortunately. So many of these writers could have a good career within writing. Well, according to me, some of them, a lot of them do have careers in writing, but they're not producing anything of merit. That's one of the problems with that kind of storytelling, Rex. I agree. Let's see. Scrolling down. See if I got any. Oh, there's a lot of people talking. Not about me, to me, but about other things in the chat. Let's see. Vaz has a comment here. I never read those Conan strips. Did they make a lot of those? If you go follow me on Twitter, once again, my Twitter handle is in the description. I post one of those every day. I started from, I think it was 1976 was the first that they started. And you had Sal Buscema doing them with Roy Thomas. But Roy Thomas does switch out some of his artists after a while. And they ran for, at least 5 years. So I got plenty of them left to post because I only post one every day. I tried to post one every day. Let me put it that way. Sometimes I don't get to do so, but yeah, there's plenty of them. There's a lot of connected stories as well. They're not just one-offs, especially because they only have 3 panels, so they try to stretch their story. Usually it takes about 20 or so of the 3-panel setups that you would see in a newspaper in order for Roy Thomas to tell a complete story. So they did make them for quite a while. If you really 5 years at least of those kinds of news strips was a good run, if you ask me. Let's see. Scrolling down, Zaktan is here. How you doing? Says have a blessed day. Have a blessed day to yourself, Zaktan. Let's see. Scrolling down, we have a comment from Sound Engraver. Thanks for the shout out, RJ. I should be posting more content now that I'm married and settled. Wedding is done. Now I can compose and write. Right. Just to let everybody know, the congratulations is in order for Sound Engraver. She is now married to Professor Geek. So the two of them hopefully will have many happy years together. So scrolling down. Puffy, you have posted this comment twice, so I'm going to see if they are the same. Or no. Okay, let me read the first one. Do you believe all stories are political? They often say comics are very political back then, so it doesn't matter if they're full of woke politics now. Well, here's the point, Puffy. Let me read your second your second comment. Again, you can't. I am the all-seeing eye of RJ here. I see things you tried to delete. Buffy also says, do you believe all stories are political? I ask because people say comics were always political, so why does it matter that they're woke nowadays? Now I know what you'll have to say about it. Well, this is a beautiful question for our comments or our topic tonight, Puffy, because here's the point about politics. If you take politics back to its origin point, you logically and rationally trace it back to where it comes from. Politics is a part of morality. It's literally, if you go to its origins in philosophy, politics is public morality. So again, you go back to storytelling and Aristotle and the way that he talks about the rational and logical ways to tell a story and how you need a hero. He talks about the virtue of those heroes and how you have to have a virtuous hero so people can identify with them. Because again, he goes into, and again, I'm not expressing this in the best way I know, but we only have a couple of minutes here for me to answer this question. He talks about how you need to incorporate that virtue within your character. And I'm always talking about the virtuous hero and how a virtuous hero exists within the virtues that were laid out for, 2,400 years minimum. I would say going back to 3,000 years within Western storytelling. But again, yes, if you go back to that origin point, within the fact that you have heroes. Heroes are virtuous. Virtue is connected to morality. Morality expressed in a public way is politics. And so you can make that connection to say that there has always been that connection within stories, that they have some connection to the political, especially because you're having one artist who is then conveying these stories to a larger section of the population. So you could make that argument. But the point is, I would say the difference between actually telling a good story in that way and incorporating all of those things is, number one, it is in the background of those stories. It is the fundamental origin point of some of those heroic ideals, let's say, or other types of that storytelling. But at the same time, it's also, as Aristotle would say, a reflection of reality, which is exactly where I'm going with all of this stuff tonight. The reflection of reality is logical and rational because that's what logic and reason do. They take reality and they glean the simple ideas from it that need to be there and are there no matter what within reality. Basic laws like a thing is what it is. A thing cannot be itself and its opposite in the same place at the same time. All these kinds of things. You take these things from reality, you build logic and reason off of them. And so, again, what you're doing within a story is building a rhetorical argument. And this is also a reflection of reality. But within the politics that you see within most of entertainment today, these people do not think that there is any such thing as truth. They are pure relativists, and they don't even think that reality itself exists in any kind of form that you can use as a bedrock in order to either create a story or to base something like morality upon, or what I'm always talking about, the virtues and those bases of telling a story about a hero, all this kind of stuff. So it's something fundamentally different. This is why I always talk about these people when they write, they're writing propaganda. It's a form of panegyric, not a form of storytelling, which is something completely different. They're trying to laud an idea, and they're basically praising this idea. A panegyric, if you go back to ancient times, you would see a panegyric is basically where they would take usually a person and just talk about him, exalt him to no end, to say this is the greatest person ever. That's what a panegyric basically is, without getting too far into it. And so these people who are being quote unquote political within comics right now, these people who are putting this agenda into their comics, they're lauding these ideas because their ideas are the thing that they're drawing these panegyrics about. And again, that would make what they're doing propaganda. And they got no problem with saying that that's exactly what they're doing. Again, go back to the interview I covered with Sana Amanat from so long ago. I think it was like 2011, 2013 that it came out with that interview. And she talks about how comics are there to push what she calls positive ideas, but nonetheless push ideas. That's not what they're for. And pushing those ideas, you're getting into the realm of panegyric, or getting into the realm of propaganda. You're going farther and farther away from the realm of storytelling itself. So that's the major difference. I know that it might seem like splitting hairs, but really it's going back to the origin point. That's what logic and reason are all about. You find where the origin point of these movements of ideas and men themselves come from, and reality itself comes from, and then you move forward to see how it expresses itself once again within reality and the lives of men. And when you go back to those different origin points for the difference between an actual story, which is a reflection of reality, and a panegyric or propaganda, which is just the promotion of an idea, no matter how much it reflects reality or not, then you're looking at something fundamentally different. Sorry to go off so long on that, everybody, but that was an excellent question, Puffy, and I just wanted to make sure that I got through it. Let's see. Grin says, thoughts on Prince Valiant? Well, my thoughts on Prince Valiant. I don't know, Grin, if you follow me in any other way than listening to this podcast, but I have a hero called Thomas Valiant. So yes, I don't want to talk too much about Prince Valiant. I think Prince Valiant is a great historical, not historical, but a great part of comic history. Let's put it that way. And uh, this is one of the characters. I think Prince Valiant is now in the public domain because they did that Dynamite book about Prince Valiant and a couple of other public domain comic characters. But that's one of the characters that I think should be brought back within kind of storytelling for comics right now. A lot of people have been asking me, do you think that public domain characters will help rejuvenate the comic industry? And I always answer and say, yes and no. I believe that if we take those characters and use them as sort of a mythology for building new stories, that would be the way to do it. And Prince Valiant is one of those characters that I think people should use. Let me just give you, those are my thoughts on Prince Valiant. And again, who knows? You might see some connection between my main hero of my universe, who is Thomas Valiant, and Prince Valiant someday in the future. You never know. Scrolling down. Let's see. Scrolling down. We have Lord Kaiser says, by the way, anyone saw the whole chaos that's happening around the last South Park episode? Yeah, I've seen it online, only online. If a lot of people, I'm sure, are probably answering you in the comments, but I think, who was it that I'm not sure. One of the commentators made a great comment about it, saying that um, at the very least, you have someone in mainstream popular culture acknowledging the fact that exists as a problem now. And one of the first steps to correcting bad behavior is to accept that a problem exists, and that has now happened. So, as much as I'm not really into South Park, I'm glad that that's out there. Let's see. Uh, let's see. Tony says, thoughts on Terry and the Pirates? Not familiar with Terry and the Pirates off the top of my head, quite honestly. Again, I'm always saying things are always visual to me. I'd have to see if it is a comic strip. I think it is, but I can't think of, I can't give you any thoughts off the top of my head, Tony. I apologize. Calliope says, I just know Dick Tracy from Commander Riker's skits on the holodeck and the girly version of a lady detective, Johnny Thunderbolt. I found out from you a few months ago she was a reboot of a man. Okay, well, nice to know that there are so many connections with Dick Tracy. Again, this is the fundamental impact of that story and Chester Gould on popular culture. For the last, he started it in 1931, so almost 100 years now. We're going on more than 90 years now. This man has had such an impact on popular culture and the culture of making comics. So his reflections of reality are still relevant today. Puffy says, what's your opinion on superheroes fighting organized crime? How would you go about it in a story? Honestly, Puffy, I don't know the answer to that question. I haven't even thought of that in connection to my comics. But at the same time, let's go back to Jack Kirby, because Jack Kirby is the person who would answer that question par excellence, if you ask me. His stories, especially his Captain America stories, he talks about in a lot of his interviews, the larger ones. He does some really long interviews because, again, he's Jack Kirby and people wanted to do great interviews with him. But he talks about growing up in New York and how there were these different gangs. And to Jack Kirby, those different gangs of basically different ethnic groups were gangsters. That's what he called them. He always called them gangsters because, again, they were part of a gang, so they were called gangsters. So to some extent, he sort of transferred that over to the idea of organized crime within his storytelling. And so he has people like Captain America and his other heroes, again, plenty of other heroes as well, um, different characters that he created fighting gangsters. So again, I never really thought about it for my own storytelling, so I can't answer that question. But if you want a good answer to that question, I would say go back to the older Jack Kirby stories. You know, something not the galactic ones that you would normally get with things like Eternals or stuff like that, but the more based ones, even Captain America, and you'll see the way that he is really, again, since Jack Kirby is so influential in making comics and creating the medium of comics, that you would get the answer to that question within his work. Hopefully that answers your question. Let's see. Scrolling down. Puffy has another question here. Also, I'm sorry for my comments are coming out weird. I'm using a new device. That's no problem, Puffy. Let's see. Scrolling down. Oh, Michael has a good comment here. Dixon Hill was Captain Picard's holodeck program. Dixon Hill. I I have not heard that name in quite a while. I haven't watched The Next Generation in quite a while, so I forgot completely about Dixon Hill. All right, scrolling down. Scrolling down. Greg is here in the comments. How you doing? Greg says, I'm late for an important date. Don't follow any white rabbits, Greg. So let's see. Scrolling down. To Vaz. Vaz has a comment here. Have you ever read Some Femforce was originally made with a new superhero heroines that were in the public domain, like Miss Victory and a few others, still going on today? Yes, I've run across Femforce. I do have some of those. I think the Femforce began in the 80s, if you ask me, if I remember correctly. I think it's been around for quite a while. I think I own some of those Femforce comics. I can't remember. I think that some of those characters were from Airboy or the universe that Chuck Dixon had his hands in with Eclipse at one point, things like that. But yes, if I am thinking of the same version of those characters as you, Vaz, yes, I do. Because at some point, I think it was like 5 years ago, I looked up to see if they were still making those comics, and they were. They're making them online. They're only digital now, if I remember correctly from the last time I looked this up. And again, that was probably 5 years ago. So yes, I have come into contact with those comics, but it's not something that I ever really connected with and read to an extent that I would know whole story arcs. But again, using public domain characters, I would always encourage people to use those in a unique way, and I think Femforce did that. So let's see. Oh, look, I got a super chat from Sound Engraver. Thank you very much, Sound Engraver. Thank you. Sound Engraver says, I don't have a question tonight, but I always look forward to your live streams. Art is a reflection of reality, always a good topic to cover. Thank you very much, Sound Engraver. Thank you. Once again, I have to shout out Sound Engraver and say that she has her own channel about these things that I talk about, but more in connection with music. So go on over to Sound Engraver's channel and give her a subscription. Julie is here in the comments, says, there's political prescriptive now and partisan rather than exploring morality or political topics. That's a good way to put it, Julie. Good way to put it. That would be what a panegyric basically is saying this political idea is correct. It's not, let's look at this political idea and you can determine as the reader whether or not it's correct. So I think that's what you're getting at, and that's exactly what I see as well. Greg says socialism is about the manipulation of society. Yeah, if you go back to original socialist documentation, the again, one of the things that I have degrees in political theory and history at the same time, and philosophy and all these kinds of things. But I studied the history of thought, and if you go back to the origin documents of socialism, yes, it does incorporate within its basic modus of operation the manipulation of society. It's not something that really can be argued against. That's what they do. It's all about societal pressures and societal movement, and the individual doesn't matter. It's all about society, and so the movement forward of society that you guide. So yeah. So Tony says, thoughts on the Dick Tracy movie? The only Dick Tracy movie I can bring to my mind, there might have been another one, I really don't know. But the one that came out in the 90s, my thoughts on that movie, it had, who was the, I can't even think off the top of my head who the main actor was. I know that oh what's his name? Anyway, someone put that in the comments. I'm sure it'll be in the comments 5 minutes after I finish this question. But it was a, let me put it this way. It was a valiant try to take Dick Tracy and to put him on the screen. There was a very interesting interpretation of the criminals within Dick Tracy, and especially someone like Mumbles, who was in the movie. That was a really unique way to put that character in the story. And I think it was really the best character for me, anyways, the best character within the movie. But it came at a time where it was telling these kinds of cartoon and comic book stories where they didn't quite understand that comics can't be translated 100% from the page onto the movie screen. They just don't work out that way. And that was an attempt to do that, and it didn't play out very well in some of how the movie was expressed. But again, it did have some merit in its storytelling and its attempt to take the Dick Tracy stories and to well, let's just say pay homage to them, really. So that would be my take on that. It's not a great movie, but it's a great attempt to praise the character and its legacy. Let's see, scrolling down, scrolling down. Vaz says, I have a Kelly Sue DeConnick trade paperback that I bought before knowing who she was, what kind of story she did. I left it unread on top of a pile to remind me never to do that again. One of the things, Vaz, I just off of that comment, one of the things I wanted to mention either tonight or some other night, video or night that I do a live stream. Someone had noticed, and I haven't been to the comic shop in quite a while, so I couldn't tell you this right now. My local comic shop closed down. There's only one that's anywhere even close to me now, and I refuse to go to it just because of the well, the people who run it, really. Not they're one of those people who would push things on everybody. Anyways, but they're saying that within the new comics that are coming out right now, they stopped putting people's names on the cover. I don't know if that's true or not. If you know in the comments, let me know in the comments if you know that answer to that question. They stopped putting people's names on the cover because they started to understand that people would look at the cover, see a name, and go, "I'm not buying that." I literally did that. I looked at a cover and said, okay, I know this person's name and I know it has a negative connection in my mind. I'm not even going to pick that book up. I'm not even going to read it, just like you're talking about here, Vaz. So it actually reminds me of what they did back with, I think it was early 70s, maybe mid 70s within DC, where they put the checker box on the top of DC Comics so that they could get people to pull DC Comics out of the pile, how they were on the spinner rack or the rack that you would get back then within your grocery store or whatever else. And they thought that it would work in order to signal to people these are DC Comics, grab them first. But people did the exact opposite. They saw the checker box and said, yeah, I don't like DC anymore. I'm not reading that. And they wouldn't even pull them out. So they found it was a detriment to actually put that checker box on those comics. So they had to stop doing that because people would not purposefully not pick them up and look at them. And I think you might see if this is correct, this information that I heard is correct, that they stopped putting the names of the creators on the cover. That's the exact same thing, if it is going on right now, that they've learned not to do that because people will not read some books from some people. And again, I would be one of those people. Scrolling down. Lord Kaiser says, They, together with the stories that they make, feel like if the brains of them and their heroes have some kind of parasite. Yeah. What is it that's going make something that's making the rounds within YouTube and social media right now is Elon Musk talking about what is it? Not the brain parasite that is eating the brains of people. He calls it, I think, like a left wing brain parasite that's really eating away at society and the minds of individuals. So just to bring that forward to what is going on today, they would say, yeah, exactly, that this political movement teaches people, well, I'll talk about it in the terms that I always talk about. It's teaching people critical theory instead of critical thinking. Critical thinking is using reason and logic. Critical theory is to criticize something until it falls apart, which is a part of basically comes from um, Marxism. It's an expression of Marxism. You have the critical theorists getting together, most notably in the late 50s, early 60s, I think it was, and they wanted to figure out a new way to promote Marxism and the worldwide communist revolution. And they came up with critical theory, which is, again, a way of destroying Western civilization through constant criticism. So if your mind is in that kind of space where you can't think according to critical thinking, but you only are indoctrinated into critical theory, then you simply destroy. And of course, this destroys the structure of your mind and your ability to think as well. So even though you might think that that was a uh, something, just a funny comment, Lord Kaiser, I think you're actually quite right. Pedro says original politics required a dialogue which most of the people just don't want. Well, here's the thing. Here's the great thing, I think, Pedro, about it in comics and what I was trying to express. Um, Within storytelling, modern storytelling, anyways, um, you have the idea of show don't tell. So you can't have what you see in a lot of modern comics, a lot of current comics, I should say, these giant word balloons. And even back when Chris Claremont did it, it really drove me crazy. So you can't have these giant discussions in a visual medium. So you need to take that discussion and play it out within the show don't tell way of telling a story and make it visual, make it something that is discussed in a way that is nonverbal, even though you can have some verbal cues and some verbal sparring and things like that as well. But you can't just have people sit down in a comic book and talk to each other. That's boring. It won't sell, and it just won't get across. There's something that I came across, by the way, that's doing exactly this. I think it's the New York Board of Education has these comics out. I was going to do a video on it. I might in the future. I'm not entirely sure. But all it is promoting these left wing causes, and it does it in a way that's just so preachy. It's ridiculous. And these things go into the school system, of course, especially in New York. And I think this is what Marvel and DC are slowly becoming. But anyway, yeah, all it is taking this visual medium and destroying it by having these giant conversations that don't work. If you want to have a medium that works in a healthy way and have these discussions at the same time, you have to work within the confines of that medium. And again, show don't tell is the rule. And so you need to leave open interpretation in this kind of storytelling, again, with the show don't tell. You can't be strict, absolutely strict within what you're trying to say within show don't tell if you're working in that way. So this is what I would say. Even though you had these comic greats who were leaning or even heavily left leaning towards the left, and you would always go back, people would go back and say, well, this person always did these leftist kind of stories. Yeah, but he did it in a way that was respectful of the medium of comics, and being respectful of that medium meant that those questions were asked or presented in a soft way which left the question open. And again, that's something you don't see today. So again, these random comments just throwing me for a loop because I have so much to say on them. Let's see. Scrolling down, Michael has a comment saying, Kelly Sudaconic said, if you don't like my politics, don't buy my books. And people took her advice. Yep. Took her advice, not just for her, but for so many of the people around her as well. Buffy says, so would you say logic and reasoning is, or at least should be, the origin point of morality? Yeah, um, because logic and reason are based off of reality, and morality is based off of reality. That's how you live a moral life. What is true, and morality is based on truth, and what is physically is reality. So those two things are connected, definitely connected. So scrolling down, scrolling down. Da, da, da. Rex says, any thoughts on the works of H.P. Lovecraft? Rex, I don't know if you were here when I talked about this last time. Lovecraft is not somebody that I really follow or pay any really, I don't know how to put it. I don't subscribe to any of the underlying ideas that would make cosmic horror appeal to me in any way. I think cosmic horror taps into a fear, which is to some extent based upon a nihilism, based upon an idea that certainly Lovecraft's world is based upon the idea that the elder gods exist and that they're evil, and that there is nothing but those evil deities, and the biggest of those evil deities is just dreaming up this reality to begin with. That's the basic cosmology of Lovecraft's world, that there is this giant elder god that the other smaller elder gods keep asleep, because that giant elder god is dreaming up reality itself. And if that giant actually awakens, then the dream will end and everything else will cease to be. So again, it's the idea that these elder gods are evil. It's based upon this nihilism and this nihilistic idea, and the idea that there's no real true good within the universe. So be afraid. And I don't subscribe to any of that. So Lovecraft really never made much of an impact on me, because the very thing which he's doing, which is to sell a horror kind of story through this cosmic dread, makes no impact with me, because there's no connection between me and the story, because I don't subscribe to any of those ideas. So scrolling down, scrolling down, scrolling down. Let's see. Samuel is here. How you doing, Samuel? I first thought I had in answer to that organized crime comment was that Phantasm hunting old gangsters in Gotham. Okay, I'm not entirely sure I'm understanding your comment, Samuel, but I think I get what you're getting at. So basically the character of Phantasm within the what was it? The animated series Batman, where she was hunting down criminals and saying, Chucky saw your angel of death awaits. All right. So that is Samuel's answer to the organized crime question, to go back to Batman, the animated series, and see how they did it. All right. Scrolling down, scrolling down. Jasper is here. How you doing, Jasper? Jasper says, I'm not an expert on philosophy, but I think when they say all art is political, they're trying ignore the other three branches of philosophy: metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics. Well, ethics would, I agree, Jasper. I agree completely. Ethics would be basically monastics, or what's the other term for it? It's basically individual morals, as opposed to the public morals that politics is. So the whole point is that these people, they think, as Greg was talking about earlier, they think in a socialist kind of way, because the political ideology that they follow now has its origins in socialist thinking, and socialist thinking discounts the individual as having any real impact or any real worth within the societal movement itself. So something like ethics, which is concentrated on the individual rather than the political, which is public ethics, or the ethics of the society. So ethics to them either don't exist or exist in a realm that is eclipsed by the political that they are trying to, their social political ideology, and its overarching control of everything. So the idea, also to expand on that, the idea that everything's relative and that there is no truth also destroys metaphysics. And even though they keep talking about epistemology, they once again destroy the logical and rational basis of language itself within the way that they deal with language, and that would destroy epistemology. So yeah, I would agree. um, Perhaps that's not where you're going with that comment, but I agree in those terms anyways. Let's see, scrolling down. Rex says, I could honestly see supervillain groups forming their own mafia. That would be a good story. It would have to be in a realm, I think, I don't know, in a realm where um, people were very much familiar with the comic characters and the supervillains. But yeah, I think what what is the other Jack Kirby character that was even more into this entire thing within fighting mafia bosses? What is it? I think it's Captain Victory. I think Captain Victory was the character that Jack Kirby created after Captain America, and he basically told the stories that he wanted to tell within Captain America, if I remember correctly, that he couldn't tell or that he didn't get to tell. And so once again, if I remember correctly, Captain Victory does fight much more this mafia boss kind of supervillain. So I think, again, the reason why I say I think that those kinds of stories, Rex, would be good, but at the same time need to have characters that people were familiar with, is the fact that Captain Victory never took off in a way that people even remember that character. Let's see. Scrolling down. Samuel, I just want to answer this comment from Samuel. Samuel says, I didn't even know there was a stream going on tonight. Well, I try at my very best to do a stream every Wednesday night, Samuel. So I should be up every Wednesday night. The best way is to either check my channel, or if you follow me on Twitter, just check on Wednesday night and see if I posted something about when my live stream is going up. So I try to put a live stream up every Wednesday night, and I have been successful in doing so for the past couple of months. But as I warned everybody, I'm getting some things done with my internet whenever this guy finally gets here to install it. So I may be missing 1 week. I'm not entirely sure. It all depends on how long it takes him to set everything up. But I will try, as I say, to get a live stream out every Wednesday. Puffy says, oh, he's talking to Rex. So I'll just leave that be. Let's see, scrolling down. Michael says, has a comment here. I hate it when YouTubers don't notify you, or YouTube doesn't notify you like it's supposed to. Unfortunately, that's just one of the realities of YouTube. And at the same time, it's one of the realities of the fact that I've been putting up live streams with a very short notification for the last couple of weeks, just because it's been so late. And I don't want to have to wait, another hour for the live stream. So a lot of people are on the East Coast, and they just find it a little bit too late. So there's that. Let's see. Calliope says, RJ does a live stream. RJ does a live stream every night. Yeah, Wednesday night. Yes, I do, and try to do so. Scrolling down. Puffy also says, are you planning to do a face reveal? No. I don't even have a camera. Literally, I don't have a camera. I have a microphone. That's it. I don't have a camera. And even if I did, I wouldn't be doing a face reveal because I don't see the relevance of it. I want people to interact with what I'm saying and the ideas I'm putting forward more than interact with me. And really, just showing myself on the screen would be more you interacting with me. And what am I? I'm nothing compared to these ideas I speak about. I'm nothing compared to great comics and great storytelling and all that kind of stuff. I'm certainly nothing compared to the ideas and the living out of the heroic ideal. So concentrate on those. That's what I want people to concentrate on, not on me. So scrolling down. Zach 10 says, loving God is an ontological story of morality because a major part of morality is having the right priorities, including loving the true, the good, and the beautiful, including loving people. I always talk, Zach 10, great comment, because I always talk about the love of the true, the good, and the beautiful. And I always talk about how, yeah, you need to embrace what is. You need to embrace the truth, and what is true. So yeah, that should be the basis of a moral, upstanding life, and the virtuous life. I'm always talking about the virtuous life because, again, virtue is based upon, as you say here, the the virtues are in their order, as you know, going back thousands of years: prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. And each one feeds off of the one prior to it. And the first one there, the charioteer of the virtues, is prudence. And prudence is correct decision making, of course, based upon right reason, which is your reason in accord with reality. So yeah, um, this is what you're, I think, referring to exactly here, about having right priorities. That is, excuse me, that is a way of stating what I'm stating about prudence, the charioteer of the virtues, and how it is dependent upon right reason. Scrolling down, Rex says, one idea I wanted to explore was an idea of a world where literally everyone has superpowers, but without the oppressed versus oppressor dynamic. Adding non-powered people tends to add that element. Honestly, well, you could do that. I don't. Let me put it this way, Rex. The people that are writing current comics right now are so enthralled with this idea of superpowers that they have expanded the universes of Marvel and DC to a point which is farcical at this point. And to me, I think we need to get back to, for myself anyways, for my kind of storytelling, what I want to do is to get back to very basic worlds where there are few people who have superpowers, although they try. I think in my universe they sort of coalesce around large cities and things like that. So that's why you see a large number of them within Thomas Valiant, my first graphic novel. It's partly because of that. But again, to me, I think the lesser, the world that has less superheroes in it would probably be a better form of for me to tell a story. Anyways, let's see. Yeah, here we have a good comment from Samuel saying there are a lot of Dick Tracy movies in the 30s and the 40s. Yeah, as I said, there are serials, and I think some of those movies up on YouTube right now, or possibly on Internet Archives, because they have movies there that have lapsed into public domain as well. So if you want public domain stuff, like, well, it's coming up on Christmas, so like the old Scrooge black and white version, that's public domain, and It's a Wonderful Life, that's public domain, all those kinds of things. So I'm sure probably some of those Dick Tracy ones would be up in public domain on the Internet Archives, and possibly on YouTube as well. But I know some of the serials are up on YouTube. So something, if you want to get into Dick Tracy, if you want to go watch a movie, yeah, go check those out. Let's see. Warren Beatty, thank you very much. Orbital Bacon, thank you very much. Orbital Bacon, you're a little quiet in the comments there. You feel like you're in school, but thank you very much. That is exactly. I could not remember his name for the life of me. It's the Warren Beatty movie. Let's see. Scrolling down. Let's see if I can get to the end of these comments since I've been talking for an hour and a half almost. Rex says, funny thing is that a lot of comic book movies of the early 2000s tried too hard to be taken seriously as a reaction to the 90s film, and that backfired. Agreed to some extent, because I don't really like the too dark um, Batman, although there is some merit, again, as I talked about previously in other live streams, there is some merit in that sort of Zack Snyder way of telling a Batman story. But yeah, I think it was very much a reaction to the not. Yeah, it's a reaction to how campy the Michael Keaton Batman was, even though Michael Keaton's Batman, when it came out, was extremely dark and trying to be a counterpoint to the campy Batman before that. So it just keeps on going down this road of darker and darker. Let's see. Zach Den says, once you have the right values, virtue, you can conform to reality and discern natural law. Exactly. I agree, Zach Dan, already. And then apply it to circumstances. Yeah, that's what prudence is. So that's exactly what prudence does for you, anyways. We'll say not what it is, but what it does. Puffy says, what do you think of stories with messages tell you what they think of a topic versus stories that let you decide what your opinion is on the topic. I think both work dependent on what the story is. Yeah. You answered your own question right there, Puffy. They both work depending on what the story is. And again, depending on what the story is how it connects to reality and the reality of those situations themselves. Because some things that we deal with in public morals are just social constructs. They're based upon probably, hopefully, if they're anything real, on larger um, ideas that connect to reality. But some of them come from reality itself and have a more direct path from reality. And so some of those things can be determined very easily. Some of them very difficult, in a very difficult manner. Anyways, so some of them need much more breathing room in order to explore them. So it depends on the story that you're telling. Quite right. Buffy also says, RJ, I think the comic shops are closing so they can push you into the woke comic shop. Don't let them win. No, I'm not going to let them win. I'm probably, as I had said uh, previously in one of my videos, I'm probably going to simply go to comic shops when I travel now. So that'll be about it. Scrolling down, scrolling down. Da, da, da. Scrolling down, see if I can get to the end of the comments here. I apologize if I'm missing anybody. I'm trying to get to everybody in the comments. Vaz has another comment here. The names are on the cover, but they are a very small print and they have a, and you have to look to notice, at least on the ones I still buy. Okay, good to know. Thank you, Vaz. Da, da, da. Let's see. Samuel says, in the collectors group I'm in right now, we call those DC Comics Go check issues, and they're very sought after in my group. We get quite excited when we see one. Well, it is a nostalgia, even to me. It's a look of nostalgia. If you notice, if you own Thomas Valiant #1, my first graphic novel, if you go to the back cover, you will see a checker box because it is something very nostalgic. And I had to put something on the back to tie together the back cover. So I did that. So it is nostalgic, even though those comics at the time were again shoved into the background and people really didn't think they were very good. Let's see. Yes, Rex is correcting me here to say that Musk was talking about the woke mind virus. Yes, indeed. The woke mind virus that eats away at people's minds. Scrolling down, scrolling down. Puffy says, Elon Musk to me is a wild card that, while I have no personal opinion on, is so wild I would only work with him if I had to. Well, I was going to actually speak about this a little bit on my upcoming Saturday video, just a little bit, but yeah, I'm not an Elon Musk fan, especially because of his ideas of what is it, connecting people's brains to computers and things like that, which is what do you call it? The omega point that they're trying to get to with what do you call it? Post-humanism or whatever it's called. Anyways, so I'm not a big fan of that in any way, but you really, and I want to talk about this, I think a little bit on Saturday, you really, I don't think many of us appreciate just how much of a turning point in the culture war happened when Elon Musk took over Twitter, because Twitter drove the crazy train. And there's so much of that to unpack. I might even do a separate video just on Twitter and how much it has changed and how much it has changed the kinds of storytelling, or at the very least, the interaction with storytellers sometime in the next couple of weeks. All right, scrolling down. Let's see. Lord Kaiser says, they keep destroying our culture, but as long as people can create great things, that's the way to flow. Yeah, that's the way to go. I agree, Lord Kaiser. Create. That's what I'm always saying to people. Get out there and create, because we need to create a alternate well, just for us anyways, we're talking about an alternate culture that people can get good stories from. I always say, you look at like the Eastern Bloc countries within their time under the USSR, they knew they were controlled by this dominating idea and this dominating culture that no one wanted to take part in. And so what they did in order to fight this communist ideology that was just controlling everything around them was to create a new culture, because they said to themselves, this underground culture needs to grow and needs to be there so that people can have it, so that once the evil of this communist dictatorship eventually falls, we won't be left with nothing. We'll have something for our culture. We'll have something there that we can build on. And that's exactly what I keep referencing when I say people need to create and create alternatives, so that there are stories and entertainment out there for everyone. Let's see. Lloyd Kaiser also says, I don't fully trust Elon, but at least he's doing good things. I agree. I agree, Lloyd Kaiser. Rex also says, another trope people have trouble with: poor communication kills. Sorry. Characters don't communicate with each other when needed, causing problems. I try to avoid this in a believable way. Rex, this is something I also struggle with. It's that you have to have your characters communicate with each other, but the limitations within sequential storytelling um, does hamper the ability to put in too much dialogue. And again, you shouldn't be putting in too much dialogue, anyways, especially with people like us, Rex, who are just really learning as we go how to make comics. It is difficult to really, well, for me anyways, Rex, I think you create both the story and the art for your comics, so you have much more control over this than I do. But for me, I'm putting out a script for my artist, and my artist is giving me back the pages, and I have to find a way to fit my script into those pages as much as possible, and then I give it to the letterer, who is Eric Weathers, and he has to figure out even more how to put this in. So you can't put in too much dialogue, but at the same time, that sometimes stifles the ability of the characters to connect with each other when they talk. So it's very much on the top of my mind, that exact thing you're talking about here, Rex. And especially because when I worked with an editor, when I was working in polishing my novel manuscript, which again, I always say someday, hopefully I'll get published, maybe as a graphic novel. Um, One of the things that my editor always talked about was, you have these people asking questions, but then a person doesn't answer that question. That's not how people act in normal life. Don't do that again. My editor kept on having to pound that into my head. So that was one of the versions of, you have to have this conversation flow. And again, I'm trying to bring that conversation flow from a medium, which is novels, where you had plenty of room to put in dialogue, to comics and graphic novels, where you have a limited room to put in dialogue. It's very difficult. And it is a skill unto itself, Rex, which I must become better at. Let's see. Greg is still here and says, if you can't be reduced to its if it can't be reduced to its simplest form, it has no merit. This is conservative minded philosophy. Well, I think that it's not, well, to some extent it's a conservative minded philosophy, but to some extent it's also a modern philosophy, a modernist philosophy, just because modernism, um, not in the theological terms, but in the cultural terms, was a reaction, as I said in some of my videos, to the hyped up and hyper consumer driven, what do you call it, conveyor belt way of making things. What do you call it? I can't think of the term off the top of my head. Anyways, since it goes so fast, you have to take things and to whittle them down to their very essential core and see how they still work with just the essentials. But yeah, that's one of the ways that conservatism does work, because you want to go back to first principles to find out how, let's say you're talking about politics, you have to take your politics, and originate from um, it should originate from natural law, and natural law should be able to, if it is expressed correctly, tie itself to original principles of the universe and of existence, and that's taking things back to their simplest form. Simplicity, I don't know, a lot of people take that word and think about it in the incorrect way, not the philosophical way. So There's a difference between the practical use of the word simplicity and the philosophical and theological word of the use of the word simplicity. Anyways, Greg also says nihilism is just a hate for life itself. Agreed. I'm agreeing with a lot of these comments here tonight. Let's see, scrolling down. Da, 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 da. Scrolling down. Let's see if there's a lot of cause chatter in the comments. So I'm trying to get to the bottom of the comments. I'm not entirely sure how much of these are for me. And again, I've been talking for more than an hour and a half. I'll get through the last of them. Lord Kaiser says the old animated series of the 90s had some exclusive villains that were interesting, like Volcania and Dr. Luminous, that I believe were on the Superman series. Okay, I'm not entirely familiar with the Superman series, only very vaguely in my mind, uh, having watched the Batman animated series so long ago to that. So let's see, scrolling down, scrolling down, scrolling down. Baz says, no face reveal. How about a boot? How about a boot at comic book conventions to sell your comic? So sell my comics and graphic novels at a comic book convention. Um, I had thought about it, Baz, honestly, but I don't know. Quite honestly, it would take such it. There's a lot involved in just setting up a booth at a comic book convention, a lot of stuff that you would have to prepare to do. And I would rather take that energy and put it into making a new comic. Quite honestly, I'm not opposed to it completely as an idea sometime in the future. But right now, I just want to get out more books and to get out. I have so many stories stuck in my head that I have to get them out as much as possible because you gotta, as Richard was saying on Richard Meyer was saying on one of his videos recently, you got to put something out at the very least once every 6 months, or it's going to die in the minds of the people. So I'm just getting to that point now, so I got to actually ramp up my production, if at all possible. The more and more I learn about how to create this, and the more and more to create comics and graphic novels, and the more and more I get a flow working with the people that I work with. So I'm concentrating on that right now. Let's see. Scrolling down. Lord Kaiser says, let him stay anonymous as I don't want him to get doxxed. Yeah, that's part of it as well. I don't want to get doxxed either. People have been trying to dox me since I had 300 subscribers. So yeah. Puffy also says, but RJ, you are something. You mean a lot. You are just as important as the things you talk about. You believe in God, don't you? You were created by him because he loves you a lot. Well, thank you very much, Puffy. Yes, I do believe in God. But I'm just saying that I want people as a part of this channel to think about those ideas more than about me, to interact with those ideas. That's why I always end my normal Saturday videos with, have I given you anything new to think about? It's not, do you agree with me? It's, did you get something out of this? Are you thinking about something that I thought about? That kind of idea. Let's see. Let's see. Scrolling down. Scrolling down. Buffy also, before I get to Baz, Buffy also says anonymity can be a superpower. Well, it's a part of a lot of superheroes. So hey, Baz says, I was just kidding. Wouldn't want him to suffer through a modern comic book convention with all the progressive panels and writers that would be around him. Again, I'm not discounting it at some time in the future, but right now I'm concentrating on just making good comics. Bethel is here. How you doing, Bethel? I see you in the chat. Very good. I'm going to get to these last comments because I've been going on for much too long today. Rex says, any thoughts on the giant monster genre? I'm a Godzilla fan myself, so I hope to play in that genre eventually. Well, I am also a Godzilla fan, Rex. I'm looking forward to, although I probably won't get to see it for years to come, just because my schedule. Godzilla -1, I think, is the name of the movie, the new Godzilla movie that's coming out. I think it goes back to the time before the original Godzilla movies. I think that's what the plot of the movie is. So it looks really good, if you ask me. I even one of the few movies that I've been giving some press to on my Twitter whenever I repost things. But yeah, that looks really good. And also, in connection to that, when I think about Godzilla, I also think about the Shogun Warriors. Shogun Warriors are toys that I had when I was a kid. Shogun Warriors, if anybody doesn't know what I'm talking about, they were giant mecha, and sometimes they fought Godzilla. Within Marvel Comics, the Godzilla run within Marvel Comics within the 70s, Shogun Warrior fought Godzilla. So yeah, I have a special place in my heart for those kinds of stories. I just don't see myself ever telling one of those kinds of stories, not in the near future, anyways. Um, it is something I am attracted to, but again, not something I'm attracted to as a writer right at this point, anyways. Scrolling down, and my comments just jumped. Give me a second here. Michael says, everyone loved Elon Musk until he criticized the establishment. Now the establishment seeks to punish him and to have him recant and repent and get back in line. Yeah, I agree, Michael. And I don't know, I can't remember who off the top of my head said this, but never apologize to these people. Cancel culture is a participation sport. That's how it was expressed. And I think that's the best way to express it. That is to say, these people only have power to cancel you if you give them the power to cancel you. So don't participate and don't apologize to them. Let's see. John is in the comments saying, appreciate you, RJ. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Transhumanism. That's the term that I was thinking of, John. Yes, thank you. When I was talking about Elon Musk, and I don't like his concentration on transhumanism. Yeah. Rex also says, I just got to bring this up. Musk believes the theory that we all live in a simulation similar to the Matrix films. It's funny. I don't understand these simulation people who think we live in a simulation thing. You're just talking about reality as it's been expressed for thousands of years, just according to technology now. It's the same thing. I mean, the idea that there is a spiritual realm and it exists and it existed prior to this one, and that we live as a copy of that spiritual realm, which is bigger than us. That's the idea of religion and spirituality from the very beginnings of history that we have. So to have this idea that we live in a matrix where it's just a copy of some other hyper reality that exists, well, yeah, that's just the spiritual realm and the physical realm. What's the difference? I don't understand the difference between what these people think that they're coming up with something new. I really don't. Anyways, scrolling down. Bethel says the woke mind virus is very severe infection. It attacks the cognitive capacity of a human so that the person doesn't have the capacity to overcome the infection. Truth is the only great vaccination. Very, very good comment, Bethel. I don't think I have anything to add to that. Quite right. Scrolling down. I'm going to have to talk about John's comment here. Preach the gospel at all times. Use words if necessary. Some with comics, the less words, the better. I don't like that comment. Sorry, John. That's not to say I don't like your comment. I don't like the comment within your comment, because that's a comment that's attributed to St. Francis of Assisi, but it's not actually something St. Francis of Assisi actually said. It's misattributed to him. I think it was something someone came up with in the 1930s. But anyways, that's why I don't like that comment. But yes, I agree with the second part of your comment where it says sometimes the less words are the better. Who was I listening to? I was listening to an interview with, I can't remember. I think it was I was listening to the interview on John's Long Box with J.M. DeMatteis, which is great, by the way. Go over to John's Long Box. He has some great interviews over there. It's a great channel. But J.M. DeMatteis was saying that there are some of the, because he wrote the Craven's Last Hunt for Marvel. When he got back some of Mike Zeck's art from those books, he said, I was going to put words in there, word balloons, and some kinds of story in that fashion. But when I saw that art, he says, I saw the story play out within the art itself, and I didn't need to say anything. And so you get some pages at the end of some of those books where it's just art. There's nothing but art. You don't get any words at all. So yeah. And I talked about that connection with Will Eisner as well, about how you can substitute one for the other, and if you become really good at sequential storytelling. So yeah, sometimes the less words is better. Sometimes I agree. Let's see, Pedro has a question. RJ, do you think that include people or situations of real life helps your story or limits your story? I think it helps the story. Quite honestly, this is what I'm trying to talk about here today. Including real people and situations does help your story. Now, to include something that's going to, but again, I'll qualify that, Pedro. I'll say that include something that's really definitely human, but at the same time, don't ensconce yourself too much in a story that's only going to be understood by people right here, right now. Quite honestly, if you do that, by the time your story gets out into the world, it's already going to be outdated. So connect. That's why I'm part of the reason why I'm always talking about the heroic nature and to go back to heroic virtues, all this kind of thing, because that's something that human beings have been connected to and can connect with for all of human existence. So get back to those realities, get back to those limitations, if you want to call it that, excuse me, because that's a connector between the artist and the reader, and it allows you to convey that story in a deep and meaningful way. But again, to do it in a way that's just going to be forgotten about 5 minutes from now, no. That kind of reality, that kind of personal situation, that doesn't lead to good storytelling. Let's see in the comments here. We have Snakeas. Haven't haven't you seen a White House press conference? They don't answer questions all the time. Oh, I'm not supposed to answer every question. Is that what you're saying? I want to answer as many questions as possible. I know that originally these live streams started out with me talking about making great comics, but really I want to interact with you guys a lot more. Let's see. Industrialization. It wasn't exactly the word I was looking for, Lord Kaiser, but yes, um, that's what I was talking about. Sound Graver says the worst television and the worst television and even classic literature is when a character makes a really important statement and another character jumps to another topic. No one does that. Eh, I wouldn't say no one does that, but I would say that the stilted nature of actually discussing things in reality does not translate into that kind of storytelling. You need to be continuous, which is again because we live in reality. If you have a conversation with someone and they don't want to answer your question, yeah, you can do that because the meta um, imposition of the rules of reality does allow for that, but you can't take all of those rules and imprint them exactly onto any medium, and you have limitations in any medium, and so yeah, your conversation can't go that way within a story. It just, again, working with editors, they will just rip you to pieces if you try to do that. John says, Einstein's razor, make things as simple as possible, but no simpler. I ran across a really funny video on that kind of topic, John, which was um, a a physicist tries to answer the simple questions of an engineer, and the physicist was getting very upset because the engineer would go back to the simplest method of doing things, and the physicist wanted to go into these grand explanations. Anyways, it was kind of funny. So yeah, scrolling down. Da, da, da. Alessandro is here. He says, I have had this interest in the clash between chaos and order since I read a comic by Ehrlich of Melbourne, whose aforementioned clash has great importance in the story. All right. Well, the clash between chaos and order is something you want to go back to. Go back to the Theogony. You can go back to that, and that's what, probably 2,600 years old now. Yeah. then there's the clash of chaos and order at the beginning of that. So we are definitely, as Europeans, Alessandro, bent towards thinking about such things. Let's see. Scrolling down. Rex says the 90s Superman cartoon is great and I recommend it strongly. It gets the character Superman right. All right, good to know. Bethel also has a comment as I get near the bottom. RJ, I have mentioned the last time the Faraway Paladin. It is also an anime series that now goes into its second season, so you can watch it. Don't worry, the overpowered part of the main character belongs to, let me get back to the story and ask the important question, what is courage, in probably the second season where he had to face a much stronger enemy than him. Okay, good to know. I will, if I get the chance, look that up, Bethel. Thank you very much for reminding me about that. Scrolling down. Alessandro says the line from Milton, is it better to serve in heaven or rule in hell? That's a line from Milton, by the way. Scrolling down. Scrolling down. Hopefully, I will get to some more comments before I got to go. Lord Kaiser says everything he does, talking about Elon Musk, is to reach the end of that vision, which is to get to space. I think Lord Kaiser is talking about. Let's see. Snakes says, I don't know, canceled people have been fired from their jobs or lost future work. It is very much real for many people, whether they believe in it or not. Sorry, I don't think that comment was directed towards me. So I'm getting lost in the comments right now. So give me a second here. Rex is answering my question from before. The simulation theory came about due to weird memories and some things people see when stuff seems to glitch, like birds just freezing in the air with no discernible cause. It's not solid. I would say the thing about that's a trick of the light, actually, Rex. If you ask me, things seemingly freezing in the air. If the human eyes work in a way in which they will concentrate on something that has no background, so much so that they will make it move or stay still, even though it doesn't. In the mind, anyways, it will make it look like it is something that is still. Since your eyes jump, if you're staring at it and it has no background, you'll make that, say you see a light in the distance, like it's only one light in complete darkness, and you're just fixing on it. That's the only thing you can see. You might see that light move, even though it doesn't move. Why? Because your eyes are moving and you're thinking that the movement of your eyes is the actual movement of the thing. Same thing, actually, I would say works at some point in the opposite way. Your eyes are moving along with the thing, and all of a sudden it looks like it's standing still because it doesn't have a background. Again, there's that, and the memory tricks about the fact that sometimes your brain works in a way where it takes short-term memory and shoves it into long-term memory, which is what a lot of people think that deja vu is. So there's a lot of these things. I agree, Rex. A lot of these things are just not good ways to base any kind of philosophical principles on whatsoever. Let's see. Alessandro says, I know you don't like multiverse stories, but I was working on a comic focused on this idea, but based on Platonism and classic mythology. Huh, very interesting. Very interesting. I don't know how multiverse and Platonism would work together, but that would be an interesting read. Let's see. Alessandro also says, and the heroes are a police force that fight for order. Okay, interesting. Lord Kaiser says, the simulation theory is now tied to the called Jupiter or Matasuka brain megastructure. See Isaac Arthur for more information. Okay. I'm lost, completely lost with that comment, Lord Kaiser, but thanks for the information anyways. Let's see. Michael says, there's a reason the hero's journey has endured for thousands of years. Agreed, because that's part of good storytelling. Scrolling down. And I think I've gotten to the bottom of the comments with Alessandro saying, RJ, what do you think of Gaiman's works, American Gods? Oh, Gaiman's works, American Gods, Lucifer, and the Sandman. Um, I don't like Neil Gaiman. I talked about this plenty of times. If you let me put it this way, I don't like Neil Gaiman because he tries to take a British sensibility and impose it upon American storytelling, and I don't think it works. I think it breaks American storytelling. I think if he wanted to tell his British style stories in a more British venue or British way, he should do so, because really I think he has that British style of storytelling. And I don't think it translates into something like the American medium of American comics. I really don't. Sandman was not although it was visually stunning, it's not something I ever really cared for. American Gods is not something I've ever gotten into. Lucifer, I don't even. If you're talking about I don't know if he has a connection to is it the television series? It's not something I follow whatsoever. Neil Gaiman is not a writer that I would. Let's just put it this way: there are some writers that I look at and I say that this person is, heavy progressive or, wants to destroy me. I know in some way, shape, or form because of the things I believe. I will just not pick up their books. Neil Gaiman is someone I won't pick up his books because I don't like his writing style. I just don't. I don't think it meshes well with a lot of the things he tries to do. And it's shown in the fact that he I don't want to go on too long about this, but within something like the Sandman, okay, within North American comics, it's something that happened within North American comics a long time ago with Tarzan. One of the we're talking about Dick Tracy earlier, but within the Tarzan um, strips that came out within the newspaper. The original artist, or one of the original artists for those Tarzan strips that came out, actually came up with proportions for comic strips that worked much better for the eye so that it would see this two-dimensional figure as a three-dimensional story. And that became the standard for North American comics and especially for superhero comics. But then Sandman came along and broke that entire dynamic, which had been going on within North American comics for decades and decades. They took the visual, and again, the artist for that, again, he is someone who worked with Don Chen, a good friend of mine. Don, I would call Don a friend. But he took the original proportions of American comics and said, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to go back to just standard proportions of the individual. And we're going to put that down on the page so it's distinct from American comics. But again, tries to be an American comic. To me, that's something that shouldn't be done. I mean, you can do it and you can have an audience for it, but it's not mainstream. It's not something that needs to be, I don't know, something that needs to take over the American comic industry. And so again, it's a side story. I think of Neil Gaiman um as big as he is, I think of Neil Gaiman as an indie creator that has gotten a little bit too big. We'll just put it at that. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Okay, so everybody's trying to comment now so I don't leave. Is that what it is? Da, 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 da. Snake says, I'll admit I've slowed down on buying indie comics because I haven't received anything from some creators I've ordered from. Unfortunately, excuse me. Um, I am in the same boat. I'm going to be late by a month, maybe a month and a half on my latest book, unfortunately. So I have to get better at trying to calculate the amount of time it takes to put out those books. But I'm trying to get them out to people as soon as possible. Let's see, scrolling down. Rex says here about Neil Gaiman. Neil Gaiman uses the idea of belief literally makes things real. Can't say that I like that idea. Neither do I. Scrolling down. Alessandro says, RJ, one last question. What do you think of Garth Ennis's work like The Preacher again? The Vertigo stuff never appealed to me. I just don't like the Vertigo stuff. So The Preacher, again, was not something I am a superhero guy. Oh, we'll just put it that way. Well, that would include Garth Ennis and Neil Gaiman and so many others. I'm a superhero guy. Let's just put it that way. Scrolling down, see if anybody has anything. Nope, just people commenting to each other in the comments. So I'm going to leave the comments. And I want to thank everyone for showing up. We got about 35 people here at the height, 32 people here now. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I didn't have backgrounds for you to show you some more of the great stuff from Dick Tracy in the background. Let me see here. Just 1 second here so I can move this stuff off of. There you go. So you can see a little bit more of Dick Tracy. So once again, thank you everyone for showing up this week. I will have another live stream for you next Wednesday night if everything goes well. And I will have one for every Wednesday coming up if in the near future. That's my plan. Just in case you're wondering when I do these live streams, it's always Wednesday night, if at all possible. So there's that. And I have been talking for much too long, almost 2 hours now. So I will just say adieu to everyone and show you the second small trailer for Crom the Destroyer. Links for my graphic novels are in the description for anyone who wants to see my work. And you can read an 11-page, the first 11 pages of Crom the Destroyer on the Indiegogo website if you go over and click on that link and go over to the Indiegogo page. So again, I'll leave you with the short trailer for Crom the Destroyer. Thank you very much for everyone who's shown up. I will see you all again next week or possibly this Saturday. Bye.
No matter how many wars you fight, no matter how much blood you shed, no matter how much rage you loose, no matter how many demons you face, no matter how many companions you lose, no matter if our kingdom falls, I know that you will return to me in honor.